My Audubon career started here along the Gulf Coast in the Mississippi River, so it feels like coming home in some ways to be back. I have to say that I've had the great privilege of birding in more than 30 nations on 6 continents and seen close to 2,000 species of birds, but few places have lodged themselves in my heart the way the Gulf Coast and its birds have. So I've composed a little meditation this morning for you on the Gulf Coast and its birds, and I'd like to share that with you now. I'm actually going to get out of the way here so you can focus on the birds, and we'll get this story started. This is one of my photos from just before the BP oil spill in 2010. The rookeries of the Gulf Coast are one of my favorite spectacles on the planet, and we will talk more about those in just a minute. But we'll begin our story inland along the great rivers that pour into the Gulf: the Pascagoula, the Mobile, the Brazos, the Atchafalaya, and of course the awesome Mississippi. In these river floodplains grow mighty swamps of bald cypress, tupelo, and water-loving hardwoods. Herons, egrets of every hue, and naked-headed wood storks, and hingas and ibises thrive here. Abundant prey means raptors abound too, red-shouldered hawks, ethereal swallow-tailed kites, and barred owls, like ancient monks to watch over the forest, its black bears, its alligators, its Florida panthers. They might remember a time not so very long ago when Carolina parakeets feasted in the cypress trees, and ivory-billed woodpeckers, the Lord God birds, called deep in the reaches of the forest. In the winter, when frost glazes the cypress knees, the sparkling songs of winter wrens on holiday from the inhospitable north twinkle through the frigid air. And in summer, when oppressive heat is hard to bear, the golden prothonotary warbler sings a melody that pierces the humidity and calls his mate, who survived another journey back from the distant mangroves of Colombia. Soon, the trees give way to grass, sedges, rushes, the prairies, the marshes, the ponds, and the bays, fresh inland and saltier toward the Gulf. Here, truly mind-boggling bird concentrations gather to feast on the bounty these wet, rich landscapes afford. Snow geese, lesser scaup, and dabbling ducks from across the continent seethe in flocks 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 strong. 15 million waterfowl in these wetlands, 95% of North America's gadwall, 80% of our green-winged teal, and 80% of all redhead ducks alive on the planet today. They join the affectionately titled secretive marsh birds, seaside sparrows with their wheezy songs, king rails, clapper rails, the mysterious yellow and black rails, and the shy but gaudy purple gallinules. The only wild flock of whooping cranes, 500 birds now, winters on the salt marsh and adjacent agricultural land on the central coast of Texas, where they hunt for blue crabs and leftover corn. And year-round, the black-necked stilts brighten the wetlands with their outlandish looks and antics. Just look at those legs. Here and there, small bumps and ridges of higher ground poke up out of the marshes or the sea, remains of ancient dunes or tips of giant subterranean pillars of salt. These cheniers, hammocks, barrier islands, and keys hold forests of live oak draped in Spanish moss, forests of singular importance to millions of birds who fly across the Gulf of Mexico twice each year. Just think about it. You're a northern parula warbler. You weigh less than 2 coins. You left the Yucatan 20 hours ago, battling a headwind 600 miles over open seas. That little coastal woodlot could be the difference for you between life and death. It's here, in famous hotspots like High Island, Grand Isle, and Key West, that birders exult in rich visual buffets of warblers, tanagers, flycatchers, vireos, hummingbirds, swallows, grosbeaks, and orioles, which on peak days can rot your retinas and scramble your brains with sheer spectacle. Salt-loving mangroves, or just grass, grow on the islands too small or close to the water for larger trees. They make safe havens for big water birds to nest, dense and intermingled throngs of tricolored herons, reddish egrets, snowies, greats, and little blues, ibises, and night herons. Roseate spoonbills decorate the mangroves like living ornaments from outer space, and every now and again, they all take to the air together, stunning pink clouds billowing in the blue, blue sky. Laughing gulls keep up a riotous cacophony of noise, the indelible sound of the Gulf Coast. And as in many of life's most profound experiences, a rookery encounter touches all five senses. Your eyes bulge, your ears are filled, you taste the salt in the air. Breeze from wind or wings tousles your hair. And then, of course, there's the smell. Well, I didn't promise all of it was pleasant. I'll take your mind's eye back to the brown pelicans, who pack their ungainly bodies into every available space on their chosen islands, grunting, squabbling, settling. If you're lucky enough to get close, they will look at you with milky white eyes, curious perhaps, but gentle and unafraid. Now we've come to the very edge, the barren land lapped by waves or covered twice a day by the tides, the sand, the beaches, the flats. Here, too, birds find a way with bills, long or short, straight or bent, slender or broad. Shore birds probe the sand for tiny benthic creatures that live here and give them life. Black skimmers thrive here on the edge, on graceful wings. With overgrown lower mandibles, they trawl the waves, snapping bills shut instantly upon contact with a fish. These birds nest directly on the sand, scraping small depressions for exquisitely camouflaged eggs and young, covering them with their bodies more to shield them from the heat than to provide it, like plovers, gulls, and terns. The scintillating terns who flutter over the waves near shore, smacking the surface suddenly, fearlessly, when they spot a fish from on high. On the sandbars and on humankind's alien oil rigs and rock jetties, gulls and pelicans loaf between feeding forays. And through the crowds, like a drunk at a club, but perfectly under control, the reddish egrets stagger wildly for fish, jerking, veering, lurching after panicked prey. There is so little land here, and it's so very fragile, but there is also so much life if we will let it be. And suddenly we leave the land behind altogether, soaring over open water. Northern gannets use these welcoming seas during the winter and during their long adolescence, plunging like missiles into the water after fish among tiger sharks and dolphins. 2, this is the domain of fish-eating visitors from the tropical south. Shearwaters, storm petrels, bridled terns, and the huge black, magnificent frigate birds, which can stay aloft for months on end, even sleeping on the wing and stealing prey from other birds or plucking flying fish from the waves, miles from anywhere in the wildness of open Gulf. Coming to know and love the birds of the Gulf Coast has been one of the great joys of my life and my birding career. Seeing them devastated by the BP oil spill was a great grief. But one thing I've learned in my years living on and supporting the work on the Gulf Coast is that hope is endemic in these wetlands. The birds are tough, and so are the people.